person in. I don't know why. I
Yeah,
have no
that
idea.
was funny. It was like asking me to join, and I was saying yes, and then it said it was deleted, and I was like, okay. And so anyway, but we're here, so we're here.
I know, I know. Thank you very much, Christy, for coming. I had the pleasure for everybody who's listening. I had the pleasure to meet Christy in person last month, I think,
Yeah.
when she was here in Niagara. We were on a workshop together. That was
Hmm.
really, really nice. And we started talking, and she said, "I'm doing human design." I said, "Oh, we need to have a live. That's it," because it's so
And
interesting.
we're both Gemini moons, so that was good.
Yes, that's
Yes, and
another. That's like another
lots
signature.
of Gemini actually. Yeah, so both sides. So obviously we're good at talking. So
Yeah, yeah, that's true. So I have a tendency to have guests with some kind of Gemini placements. I
isn't
wonder why.
that funny? All that
I know.
resonance. Yep.
Yeah. Anyway, so for everybody who doesn't know Christy, please go follow her on her account. She does human design, astrology, she's psychic and yogi and many different beautiful
Yep.
things she can offer. You can see what she does. Beautiful work. I highly recommend.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, tell me more. I know so little about human design, just here and there. I don't even know how to read that chart. So that's
Yeah.
how unknown for me that is. Okay, so
Yeah.
tell me, where do we
Yeah.
start? What is human design? What is it made of? What's happening?
Yeah. So human design is a system, and it's, includes all the things. Astrology, of course, is a big background of it, which is kind of how I found human design, because I,
Mhm,
kind of always have been into astrology. And it also includes the I Ching, and it involves the chakra system. And it's if you see a
mhm.
body graph, there's just so many. It's kind of like, what am I looking at here? What what is this
Yeah.
tool? And if anybody doesn't know their human design, but you know your astrological information, there's like 100 websites you can go plug in your information if you kind of want to follow along to like learn what you are and how this works. And there's a whole bunch of components that go into it. But at the end of the day, what it produces is a map. It's not like a funny document, but much like our birth chart, we get a body
Okay.
graph chart. And it looks basically like it almost looks like a crime scene, like when someone's like outline of the body is there, and then we have the energy centers
I like
on
that.
there, and then there's lines. I mean, I can, it's hard because I can't like show you stuff while we're talking here, but if anyone
Yeah, I
is
tried.
yeah,
I tried to
yeah.
put in. It doesn't work for me. I don't know. I'm
It's
just
okay.
anyway.
We'll go through it. Yeah, and I mean, obviously, we won't have the opportunity to get super into all the fine points today, but essentially, we have the body graph. There's 9 energy centers on it. Each represents different components, much like the chakra system. We have a head center. We'll have an ajna center, the root center, solar plexus, and they mean different things. And it's funny every time I do like a one-on-one class. We look at people are like, is this over like on my left side? Because that's how I'm like, no, it's not.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, yeah.
actually aligning to your body, but it's
Okay.
showing you kind of the only real delineation I would say with the chart is there's 2 centers in the head, and then all the rest of the 7 are in the body. And one of the beautiful things about human design is that it really goes to show you that the wisdom is not here. It's in our bodies, right? And so much of the energy and the motors and the things that do all the business are in the body, not in the head. So I always tell people your head is for your checkbook and your directions, and to get to the place, and then your body is where the real wisdom is and where it lies. And the premise being that with the human design, the way that the chart is activated is based on the birth chart, much like our astrology
Okay.
system. So the day
Okay.
we're born, the time, place, all of that. And with human design, you kind of can't estimate. You really have to know what time. I mean, much like we can do some with astrology, this you really have to know what time because it can vary throughout the day. And then it also includes details on about 3 months before we're born. So we get a personality side, and then we get a design side. And so the design side is a little bit more, I would guess you could say, subconscious energy, a little bit more passive, some of the energy that maybe we don't individually kind of resonate with. And then the other personality side is much more like what we would assign to our birth chart, things we can tell about ourselves, all of that. So it's interesting because you could
Wow.
have, yeah, you could have you know, the black side, basically the personality side, is stuff, you know. If you're an astrology person, you know this, right? You know your moon, you know your sun, you know where these things are. And what it does is then it plugs them into a gate, basically in the birth chart. Each
Yeah, I lost your sound for a moment. We can't hear you. Christy, we can't hear you. We can't hear you. Yes, better. Yeah. Yeah.
gates within them, and those gates are activated by the planets, so where they line up at the time we're born, and then the 3 months prior to our birth. And so
So why is this important? Sorry to interrupt. So why is this 3 months prior? Why 3 months? First of all?
Yes. It's I'm sure it's more of a specific date. It's about 90 days, but essentially the there's a yellow diamond in the middle of our body graph, and in there is what we call the magnetic monopole. And this particular piece of the chart is where essentially at that 30 or 3 month part, the you know, basically the neutrinos in the sky, the things, this is where the physics, the quantum physics comes in, which I probably didn't mention in the beginning. That sort of does like an imprint on the birth chart. So we have that, and then we have our actual time of birth. So I have like a skeptical brother who's an engineer. He's like, well, this stuff is silly because, you know, what if I'm, you know, when he talks about astrology, he's like, what if you're born premature, or what if you're born, you know, whatever, and, you know, things don't go the way. And I'm like, but according to human design, it happens when it happens. So those 3 months before, you're imprinted. Pretty much from that point on, that 3 months later is when we get
our part of the stardust. I call this is our little stardust that came into us. Okay, that's how I call it.
Exactly. So without getting super into the mechanics of it, this is basically an imprinting moment of when that happens. And so that's more of the red side if you're looking at most of these charts. And that's that subconscious energy. Now we can have alignment on both sides. So something like Pluto, who's very slow, might stay in the same space, and you might have Pluto on both sides, or you might have Saturn on both sides, like in the same, you know, gate or sign, or, you know, all that kind of a thing. So there could be alignments on both sides. And so then the next thing, people will look at their birth chart and say, well, why do I have this is black and this is red and this connects here and this is, and it's all based on these energies. So I'm hoping that that's not complicating. That's the mechanics of it. And the overall point of human design is essentially we're here to learn about our parts that are not defined. So the parts that are not colored in on a chart. So I know I'm looking at your chart, you have an open head center and an open root center. And so we could say that those are your places where you're more maybe impressionable, where you maybe, you know, we take on our life, we take on the people around us, you know, what our parents say, what our teachers say, what the kids at school say. As children, those are the places that we're very impressionable, and we take on, you know, we take on influence in those spaces. Now, when they're defined or colored in spaces, we're less likely to feel that there. We're a little bit more strong in that space. That's a constant defined energy for us that doesn't get as molded, say, by outside forces. And so, you know, as we grow up, you know, as kids, we're, you know, if you see little children, they know the magic around them, and they can see the joy, and they just are themselves, right? They just do what comes natural to them. And then over time, we stop doing that because someone told us it was silly, or we don't think that's the right thing to do, and we're like, oh. And what's interesting, and the things that we tend to shut down, those are our gifts, right? Those are the things that we are natural to us, that feel like magic to us. And then we shut them down because someone told us, no, that's not okay. Or that's not what we do in this house. Or that's not how we are. You know, that's not what our family does. And so
a lot of conditioning, a lot of conditioning
from so many places. And so the gift of human design, when we start to work with it and we start to cultivate, you know, our energy the way it's kind of meant to be done, dictated by the energy type that we are, we can over time start to kind of get rid of some of those shoulds and the layers and the conditioning and get back to our authentic self, which is really a beautiful thing. It's not always simple because of that conditioning. It's like, well, this is still kind of hard, and it's vulnerable, and it requires surrendering, and, you know, it's difficult,
I
especially
know.
for like a generator or a
We are,
manifesting
yeah,
generator.
we
We
are
haven't even talked
programmed.
about that. Yeah, we're
Yeah, right. So
definitely,
we are programmed. You have to kind of delete the hard disk or whatever
yes,
and completely.
yes.
Yeah.
We need to start from fresh. And so how do we do that without literally, unplugging ourselves? And so,
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
know, part of that comes with understanding your chart and understanding what energy type you are. So there's 5 energy types.
Okay.
The 2 most common are the manifesting generator and the generator. So those 2 are about 70% of the population fall into that category. And so they're similar, but there are some nuances.
Okay.
There is the generator, and what they both have in common is that they have this pink square in the center of the chart called the sacral center is defined, and that is very strong, potent energy. It's our center for joy, for sexuality, for
Mhm.
big life, all the things that we're here to be doing as people. And when
Creativity, creative
Absolutely.
expression.
Yep.
Okay.
All that stuff. And when that is activated in the chart, it's a consistent form of energy for us. It becomes a really important tool for us. And so I always say, and I like, this is my analogy with this one, we're here to be joyful. We're here to do things we love to do, right? And so if we're a
Yeah.
sacral person or someone who's a generator or a manifesting generator, and we don't do things we love, if we don't allow ourselves to like find our joy, even if you don't like your job, if you have a hobby you love, or you volunteer, or you do something of service that lights you up. So when I teach my classes, this is the point where I put up like a big lighthouse as the analogy.
Yes.
It's kind of
Mhm.
like we put up that lighthouse, we're letting our light shine, we're calling in our opportunities. And this again, I'll say, like, my other analogy that I use is like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and his Christmas special, where he puts the charcoal on his nose because he doesn't want everyone to
Uh,
see that he can do this magical thing of fly this, in the whatever, have this lit up nose. And Santa's coming like, no, take it off. Like, we need you to show your
uh,
light. And that's what we need. And so that's our sacral people who have that center defined. And so they are really, it's essential that they do work that they love. And it doesn't have to be their day job. If it is, all the better. So
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
sacral being, if they can, when you're in your flow and you're doing something you love, like, you lose time. You're like, oh, what day is it? You're like, all of a sudden, and you're still doing all this work, right? But it's like, it feels good because this is what you're here for. So that's
Yeah,
like
but
the
it's
very,
hard. I'm just thinking how it's hard. I think I'm a generator
yes,
manifester, right? So I'm kind
you
of
are.
here to do like a bunch of different things and explore the
Yes,
world, and then
yes,
and I was told, you have to find a good job, you have stability, like what, like
yeah,
putting me in this box is just terrible for me, right? I wasn't happy, you have to do
yeah,
this, or you have, super job, you just do
yeah.
this family job, like this, all these things that was expected from me, which I never fit in, to be
Yeah,
honest.
it's counterintuitive, and that's the culture we're in. Like, you must work, you must earn the money, and you must, and we're meant to do work. We are the workers. We are here to go for it. And I'm also a manifesting generator,
Yeah.
and so the nuance between being a manifesting generator and a generator, generators are all the things I just said. They're here to do the work. They're here to do things they love. They're here to, like, find their path to joy, is this the best essential way I can say it. A manifesting generator is a little bit of a hybrid in that we tend to be nonlinear. We don't necessarily do things in order. So, we are meant to have our hands in a whole bunch of pots. We're meant to, like, have a whole bunch of interests. Maybe you're reading 6 books at once and none of them go together, because I know I usually am. So, those are sorts,
Absolutely.
but
Yeah.
nobody supports that, right? No one's like, geez, maybe you should start reading 6 books, right? Because that's just like, it's just not the nature, but that's our nature. And so it's okay. And we think fast and we move fast and we can be highly impatient, which I've often chalked up to being an Aries, but also as a manifesting generator, like, why is everyone taking so long? And maybe you start something in the middle and not at the beginning. And sometimes you have to go back to the beginning, and sometimes you can just skip ahead. And that's kind of the cool part about
Oh,
being a
cool.
manifesting generator. So it's like a little bit of a difference. And so if I had the chart, I'd show you what makes that difference, but that's really irrelevant
Okay.
to
And,
the
and so we
conversation.
have who else? We have manifestors. Who else?
We have
So
the
the 5 mean?
manifesting.
Yeah.
So the generators we just kind of gave a
Yeah.
glimpse of, and then the manifestor, we'll go there next, because that one
Mhm.
is highly sort of different than all of the rest, really. So manifestors are about 9 to 10% of the population. Manifestors do not have that pink square lit up or defined. And so that means that they don't have the energy to work 40, 50, 60 hours a week. They're meant to be in charge. They're meant to sort of create the ideas, come up with
and
things.
leave.
Yes,
And
yes, and go sit down. That's exactly
somebody
it.
else is doing the work. I'm yes. Giving you like the blueprints that this is how you're supposed to do it, and then leave. I get it. Yeah.
They're the idea people, and we're all raised in this culture to just do it, chase down your dreams. They're really the only ones who should be doing that. They're really the only ones who should be chasing down their dreams. Because as a generator, and I skipped this part because I'm a manifesting generator, as a generator of any kind, we are not meant to chase after things. We're meant to bring opportunities to us. That's the hardest part in my mind of being a generator of any kind, is waiting and trusting that the universe will provide those opportunities for you when they come up. And so we're like, okay, how the heck do I do that? Because it's like, I want to keep going and I'm impatient and I want this and I want that. And I know everything that I'm seeing, but it's like, how do we wait? And what does that look like? But I always say this in my classes is like, what happened when you chased down a partner or a job or something? Like, you sometimes end up in places you're not meant to be, and it's like, okay.
I can confirm 100%. Like, I'm just thinking about situation in my life when I forced, when I forced something, I want this now. Never worked out. It always backfired in my face.
Absolutely. And that's the thing. If you're a manifester, however, if you're one of those 9% of people, you need to do that. And if you end up, say, in a relationship or a job or something that squashes your ability to be in charge of yourself, it's like, you don't feel good. You're not really living your best life. You need that autonomy.
I hear that many people they had like a human design help them with their health, because their mental health and physical health, even because the energies were so blocked, and it was like, and actually human design helped a lot with that.
Oh yeah, there's so much with health and human design, and it's especially for those folks that don't have that pink sacral center. If they work too much or too hard, they're gonna crush themselves. They're gonna burn themselves out. Mostly by like age 40, if someone's like a non-sacral being, they're gonna get sick if they keep up with the pace that most of them will do, because again, that's how we're conditioned as a society. Work, and go. And they're not meant to.
I think also the problem is that everybody, like, we expect from ourselves even to do everything. Why do we have to be everything? Can we just be a person who starts things, or a person who finishes, or a person who does the work? Just a kind of accepting the part of who we are. Because it's expected of us to do everything. You have to be perfect in everything, which is not possible. I think that's also a huge problem. Problem.
That's another excellent point, and I think that's a huge component of it. If you're a manifester, you're really just meant to go after the stuff. And if this means asking someone out on a date, or going after that job, or creating the opportunity you want that you don't see. Also, for those folks, it's really essential that their strategy really is just to let everyone else know what they're doing. So they don't necessarily need the approval. Both of my kids are manifestors. I can speak to this.
My husband is. That's why I have a pretty good idea of what that means.
Just let me know what you're going to do, because it's not that you need the permission. It's that you don't want to alienate the people in your life, because you're like just going all the time, and it's like, oh well, I'm going to go do this next, or I'm going to do that next, and it's like, well, wait, you're moving? You need to tell your mother you're moving. You need to do these things. You don't have to ask me, but you need to let me know, so it can create some harmony in those relationships. Okay. So that's super funny. Okay. That's really funny.
And then what are the two other types that are very rare as well?
So we have projectors, who are the less rare. So manifestors are about 9 to 10. The generators make up 70. Then we have 20%-ish that are projectors. Projectors are, I would say, the most diverse amongst themselves. Like, so within projectors, there's so many different kinds of authority you can have, the way your chart shows up. And essentially, they also don't have that pink square defined. They also, though, don't have like one of their motor centers connected to their throat. So they don't have the ability to like say what they want, like a manifestor would do. But these are our teachers. These are our guides, right? And so for those of us who are sacral beings, projectors are here to help us. So picture that manifestors are here to make up the ideas. We're here to do the work. The projectors are kind of in the middle, like, well, here's what you're doing wrong. Let me help you with that. And here's how you could do that better. And they are just wise. They have wisdom that's there.
How can we find our projector to help us in our lives?
Yeah, well, that's the fun part, right? Is so like, you know, I know when I first learned about this 6 or 7 years ago, I went through and because I had everybody's birth info, so I'm putting all my friends and my parents and all this stuff to look, and I was like, wow. You know, and it's so cool when you find out who's what, you know, how do they stack up in your life. But it's funny because those are the people I was going to anyway, right? Those are the people I was taking my stuff to anyway. I was like, we energetically know this stuff, whether or not we resonate with it, in that we have the conscious awareness of it. It's just,
we have a projector here.
Oh, cool.
Look at guiding tarot. Yay!
Bring you their stuff. Like that's projectors. And so the wisdom with being a projector is waiting to be asked. So waiting to be asked for your opinion, that's a critical part of being a projector. Because projectors, and this has happened so many times in my classes, and people are sitting there and you can see like the dots, you know, connecting in their head, and they're like, the woman was like, I'm a projector, and I sit at work and I tell people all the time what they're doing wrong, and no one asked me. So she came back a few months later for the level 2 class, and she said, I stopped talking at work. And she goes, not like in a bad way. She said, but I just didn't, you know, offer all the time. And then people came looking for me like, well, what do you think? Well, can you help us with this? And she's like, and then the flow is so different because she's being invited, and then they're looking for it because they missed it. They're looking for it. And it's like, you know, it's just such a different dynamic. And she's like, this has totally changed my work life. She's like, you have no idea. She's like, it's so much more interesting. And the flow is so much better. They're looking for her information. She's giving it. And it's like this beautiful symbiotic relationship. You know,
that's great.
These are folks that can like run the company, the CEO, they have the box eye view, they see everything, right? And so they're the ones who, it's this teacher, wisdom, the wise person. This is the quality that's there. Again, though, these folks don't have that pink square lit up. Their sacral center is not lit up, so they need to take breaks. They're not meant to work 40, 50 hours a week. They can do a little, take a break. And, you know, the one that's, and before, we'll jump to the reflectors next, but remind me to come back to the part about the projectors and the manifestors picking up on other people's energy around them. So,
I like that one.
Yeah. So the last energy type, this is me going out of order of my manifesting generator self, the reflectors are the last type, and they are simply 1% of the population. Very, very unique.
Wow.
I remember when the first time I found one in my own life, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. And I was so excited. They're like, why are you cheering and stuff? And I was like, because it's like, you're so special. You have no idea. And so basically what reflectors have, none of their energy centers are colored in or defined. So they don't have, so they basically are like what I call the canary in the coal mine. And so we call, basically, if something's wrong in the environment, they're going to pick up on it. And they're very, very specialized in that way. They're highly sensitive to the lunar cycles. I had a woman come in who was a reflector, and she came in for astrology. And of course, I always look when I do a chart to see what is your human design. And I was like, oh, another reflector. And we're talking, and she said that she didn't know anything about this. She didn't know she was a reflector. And she said she wanted to come for the astrology because she wanted to learn more about the moon. She said, because all my life, you know, I've always felt so sensitive. And she said, and then when I was maybe in my early 20s, 30s, she said, I figured out that I'm really sensitive to how the moon shifts. And I was like, oh my God, how do you know that? So she started tracking the moon, what sign it was in, what phase it was in, and how she felt. So she keeps this journal, which I was like, this is fascinating, like, because they're so sensitive to the changes. And I'll explain
I'm just
why
thinking,
that is.
if reflectors are in some kind of bad environment, they can reflect all this bad environment on them. It can hurt them really bad. So they have to really watch out who they kind of interact with. right? Really.
They really do. And they need to feel comfortable in their space. And this is not to say that they're not, you know, energetic or don't have strength to do things. One of the reflectors I know is highly successful, very has side business, regular job, does all this stuff and does great, but was real specific about where he wants to spend the night and who he wants to hang out with and what he does with his time, what he eats. You know, and it's funny, they need time to make big decisions. They need like a whole lunar cycle to make big choices. And so I said to his mom,
it reminds me of a Pisces energy very much.
Yes,
it reminds me of a Pisces energy.
Yeah, very, very fluid. And it's they need time. I was like, how long does it take him to make choices? She's like, oh, it takes forever. Oh my goodness. And it's so funny to see that kind of in the wild, like what you know,
Interesting.
of a reflector. So yeah, they really do. We call them that because they really do reflect the environment they're in. So if they're not well, the space is not well. There's something amiss there. So.
Okay, we have a question. Do the reflectors fall into a specific lunar phase in their natal charts?
No, you know, there's no like, it's all dictated by where the planets are and how the energy centers line up. I just did a chart for a lady whose chart looked a lot like the reflector I know, her astrology chart. So I was like, ooh, maybe she's a reflector, and she was not. So there's really not like a lineup in terms of that sort of a thing. Like you would expect, okay, if they're new moon or they're this or they're that. And I haven't found it yet if it is. I haven't found that thread that is in common. And so kind of what's interesting is what ends up happening in the chart of the human design chart. The way that the energy centers connect is through these things called channels. And so if these are two energy centers, there's gates within each. So currently, for example,
like tubes between, right?
It looks like it's energy. It's the conduit. It's like the wire that connects one shape to the next. And sometimes we only have half of one, and sometimes we have the whole thing, and sometimes we don't have any at all. And if we don't have any at all, that's, again, we have all the pieces of the chart in our life. It's just some of it's more consistent and defined, and some of it's more fluid. Where we have open spaces, we will reflect the energy or amplify the energy of the people around us. So for example, you have an open head center, you might be more likely to take in information all day, thinking about stuff that doesn't have anything to do with you or anything that's important to you.
Yes.
But sometimes you're with people that help you connect your Ajna center to the head center, and then you're a little bit more present. You can be a little bit more like, oh, I'm going to focus on what I need today. And I have the same affliction.
Yeah.
I understand you.
Oh.
So what happens is we're sensitive to that, like our environment, so the people that are around us. And then we also are prone to what's in the sky. So much like the transits overlay our birth chart, the transits are happening in our human design chart as well. So for instance, right now, Pluto and I can't think of the other planet off the top of my head are in a relationship in the human design chart that's giving everybody a defined root center and a defined sacral center right now. And it's been that way for a while, for several months, because Pluto doesn't move, right? So Pluto's been stuck at this like end point. And it's creating this like continual channel. So basically what that does in our birth chart, in our birth or our body graph, is it kind of turns that on for us temporarily. So every now and again on my Instagram, I'll post like, hey, we're going to have this energy for a week. So if you don't normally have an emotional center that's defined and you have a hard time expressing yourself, you're going to have it for this week. So have those conversations, So how can we use this to help us like kind of plan our activities or things that are happening?
Okay, so we have a chart. I know, so I just want to go quickly through everything. It's not 1 hour is not enough time, but I want to just understand. Everybody gets that number. Yeah. So what is it? So I know I'm 3-5. So what does that mean?
Okay. Yeah. So there's 6 lines, profile lines, 1 through 6, and then you can have 1 in the front, 1 in the back. So there's like a slash. It'll be like you're a 3-5, I'm a 4-1, and so what that essentially is the top 2 numbers, so our sun sign and our earth sign. We don't talk a lot about the earth in astrology. I mean, it's there, but we don't really spend a lot of time with it. But if you don't know, earth is exactly opposite the sun in our birth chart. So if you happen to look at your chart, you're like, well, what is my earth sign? So if like you're a Gemini, you're going to have a Sagittarius earth. I'm an Aries, I have a Libra earth. So the top 2 numbers on the personality side and the design side, there's a line after, there's a number after a decimal point. So for you, like your sun is in gate 35.3. So the point
Okay.
3, that 3 makes up your 3,
Uh,
and then the 5
okay.
is on the other side. And so those top 2 numbers on each side together make up about 70% of our personality, all in studying those gates. So when I do someone's chart, I'll sit down with them and I go through, these are your 4, like, let's talk about those. These are prominent gates for you, channels, like, this is all the stuff that happens. So what ends up happening is that we all have some variation of, you're a 2-5, you're a 4-2, you know, there's no 4-2, there's a 2-4, there's a 6-2. So it's like you get this combination. Some are more common than others. Like you'll have a 1-3 is very common. 3-5 comes up a bit. 4-6 is very common, and some of them are more rare. And so what we do is we look at that, and each line has an energy. So for example, a line 1 person, someone who has a 1 in their chart. And so this is for folks who know this. If you don't know this, you know, you can always grab your chart really, you know, quickly. You can grab it. A line 1 person, I have a line 1. These are people who want to research things. They want to know everything about a subject. Like they're like, I'm going to go, you know, this is a person, if you're going on vacation, you want to take them with you because they've looked up every restaurant to try, every place to go to. Like, they're
Cool.
into it. That's line 1. And line 1, a little bit of that can sometimes come from insecurity too, because you're like, I don't want to be bested. I don't want anyone to tell me that I'm wrong, right? So it's like, if I study this intently, you can't tell me I'm wrong. And then there's number 2 energy. Number 2 energy, they call it the hermit. And number 2 likes to sort of be behind the scenes. They need a lot of alone time. There's a common profile of 2-4. 2 needs to be alone, 4 needs people. So it's always this kind of, these people are like, like I love people, but only some. Or I need, you know, I know I need them, but I really would rather be alone. So the 2 energy very much like wants to be alone. And then, not to say in a bad way, but they need that time to decompress. They need, you know, whatever the things are that are going on. And this is a very high level of what's going on. So the line 3, the 3 is here to experiment. The 3 wants to like try stuff out, and 3s are here to learn by doing. Like that's their wisdom. And what I often find with 3s is that they've been conditioned like, well, don't make mistakes or don't do, you know, it's like, but this is how I learn. And so it's always like, can you accept the lessons, whether they were good or bad, because they came through trial and error, right? And so that's the 3 energy very often. And then the 4 is that one that wants to be with the community. They want to be with people. They need their network. They need their friends. They need people. And they don't necessarily have to be people that they know. They can be connected through their network. So even though you and I met at a workshop, we both are connected to Kelly. And so we sat down together, and you're part of my network now, right? So like it can be that organic, or it can literally be like, oh, well, you know my neighbor, this kind of a thing. So if someone has their
something to talk to. I get it. It's just to connect anyway.
And if you have a 4, just as a caution for those out there, you're gonna get your best opportunities through people you know. You're not gonna cold call.
Networking. Networking.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes. Cool.
So and then the number 5 is a little bit, they call it the mirror. So it's someone who, if you have a 5 in your chart, you're going to have this experience where people think you can solve their problems for them. People think they know you better than they do. There's like this like resonance that's there. You're like, do I know you? Like, what are we doing here? And so the 5, it's always, I don't think you have a 5 in your chart, so I don't know if that resonates with you. But I always tell 5 people, you know, decide how many people you want to help or who you want to help and with what. Because again, there's a wisdom with the 5 that's there, that's not with all the other numbers necessarily. Some of the pairings kind of come up with a similar vibe, but the 5 energy in particular, it's like you're really sought out. And people project a lot onto 5s too. They put a lot on 5s that isn't necessarily there. You're like, well, wait a minute, I didn't do that, or I don't know you, or what is this about? So those are 5s. And then the 6 energy is kind of like the 3 that they learn by doing. The 6 I find the most fascinating, especially from an astrological perspective, because from like birth until like their first Saturn return, they live like a 3. They're here to experiment. They're here to try things out. And stubborn, like, I'm going to walk into that wall and I'll tell you, no, it's going to hurt. No, I'm going to do it myself. Like, that's a 3, you know, as a 6, the first 29 years of life. And then from the Saturn return until their Chiron return, they sort of withdraw a little bit. They're watching, they're observing others make those mistakes, the things that they did, and they're taking it all in, right? And so it's really interesting. And then at the time of the Chiron return, the sixth line becomes the wise teacher. It's like, okay, I've made the mistakes, I've watched you make the mistakes, now I can help you. And so that's where the sixth energy comes in. And that's a really interesting, it's a really interesting number, I feel like, for people who have that in their profile, because you can watch them evolve. I mean, certainly we all evolve at our Saturn return and our Chiron return, but it's like,
yeah, but this is more obvious, you would say, more obvious for these people.
I would say if you're a six, those moments are going to be somewhat more poignant for you than, say, other people. Okay. But again, some of us have one pass at our Chiron return, some of us get five. So, you know, it's really up to the chart, right? So yeah, so those are our profiles. And then the pairing, and this would take the whole rest of the hour to go through, but we could look at the pairing and all of that, and what comes first and what comes second and all that.
I know there's some other factors in the chart. So are we emotional? We are not. Like, and this the authority, what does that mean? What is authority?
Yeah, so
like stuff like that.
So that's a 50-50 shot. So 50% of us are emotional. You and I are both emotional. Basically that's if our solar plexus is defined or not. And so if we have emotional authority, that trumps all the other centers, and that becomes how we make our choices. So I'm an emotional authority person. We need time to make big decisions, and the advice is always to sleep on it. Sure, what do I want for lunch? Figure it out. But if it's something like significant, should I buy this house? Should I take that job? Should I move? Like whatever. Those are big choices that you need to sleep on. And the premise being, and I always use this example in my classes, if when there's this emotional wave, and it's like we can be up high with the emotional wave or down with the emotional wave, and sometimes we get presented a choice. We're up at the high or we're down at the low, and we can't make choices there. We can, that doesn't go great, right? So it's like if we're up here, we're all at happy hour with my work friends, and they're like, we should all go on vacation next summer. We're like, yeah, it's great. And then you wake up, you're like,
it doesn't work like that. Doesn't work like that.
We can't do that. So
Carmen,
we have to give it time to get to the middle. What do you got?
Carmen says human design saved her life. I'm telling you, this is very powerful.
It's really magical stuff in terms of how we approach our lives and the decisions we make and how we move through. So that emotional authority, that we have the wave. Now, how defined your emotional center is will dictate how big your wave is. So if you have a lot that's in that emotional center, like a lot of the activated gates, you're going to have a bigger wave. So your ups and downs are going to be bigger and smaller. And it's like, woo, we're up here, we're down there. And I have a highly emotional chart. I have like 5 channels coming out of my emotional center. And learning this one piece of information has been like life altering. Much like Carmen said, it's like, I'm about every 10 days, I'm in a place where people probably shouldn't just talk to me because I'm going to be a jerk that day. Not because of anything other than I'm way at the bottom of my wave. And I know it'll pick back up.
So do you feel that some of the planetary transits affect more emotional authorities than non-emotional?
I feel like, again, I don't know that I wouldn't look at it like that. I think of it much like you would. This to me is like if someone does not have emotional authority, for example, so it's open, so that solar plexus is open, they're going to amplify all the emotional people in their lives. So this is interesting, especially I talk about this with parents. So like if you're a parent who has an open emotional center and one of your children has a defined emotional center, you're going to pick up all of their stuff and like blow it up. So if that's, so for example, this was my mom and I, my mom had the open, she didn't have anything in there. She had no gates, nothing activated. And I was like so emotional, Cancer rising, water child. And I was always like, oh, and she was like, stop it. Because it was whatever I was feeling, she was feeling twice, right? And so she was like, let's just calm down. Don't waste your time on those feelings. And let's forget about that. She was a projector. She had a whole different set of stuff going on in her chart. So then that shuts down my wisdom center, right? So then I'm like, okay, well, I won't be sad or I won't be upset, but we do that. And so it's like, how do how do we as parents, you know, I think this is a huge thing for parents to understand their children's chart so they can understand how this child needs to make decisions or how they're going to feel. The same thing can happen in relationships. So if one emotional center person and one not, you know, there's like that one who's not, if this one's in a bad mood, they're going to be, you know, feeling it double, triple. They're going to be like, oh, what's the matter with you? And why is it aimed at me? So, you know, I always tell the open emotional center people, they have the ability to feel everything. They can, this is the true emotional empath. They can feel your stuff, my stuff, anybody in the room stuff. They can walk into the funeral of a stranger and start crying because it's sad, right? They don't need to know the person. They don't need the connection. So that's the difference. And so that's the biggest thing.
Okay.
But it's about 50-50 shot, about 50 of us
this
way and the other way.
Okay. And then I don't know how much time we have, but the other thing I want to talk about, is it smell or something with me? I read. So there's what does that mean? What is that? What am I smelling? What am I smelling?
So that's your cognition, and so we all have that. Of different, there's different ways that can show up. But I smell people, so you would literally say like, I can smell a rat. Like I can smell something off. I can smell. It's like the sense becomes a little bit different, and you don't have to physically be smelling anything, but it triggers that like sensation for you. Like some of us have
something's wrong. Yeah.
You can kind of sense it, and it's really difficult with someone who has smell to try to pull someone off, pull something over these folks because you can smell a rat. Like you can see it coming before it shows up. So,
that's what it means. So I can, I got it. So what else do we have? Smell. What else?
Oh, the
many things. There's lots.
There's lots on that one. That one, there's a lot of the other thing people always ask me about is their incarnation cross, and so I don't know if that was something that you had looked at. That incarnation cross comes from those top 4 numbers again. So you've got your sun and earth on both sides, and it creates this like kind of a overview of you. Like this is what you're here for. This is the charge. And there's like so many variations of it. And there's only one book that has all of them in it. And it's this one. It's this Book of Destinies. And it's got everybody's in here. And so what it'll do is you look at where your personality sun is, you find what gate it's in, and then it has a whole page for you on that thing. This is the only place that I've ever seen that actually has all of it in here. You're not going to find it online. It's just one of those things that you just got to bite the bullet and buy the book for $25 because it's worth it. Because
guys, you heard it here first.
That's the only place. I don't know why they have the line on that, but basically that's like your prescription for you. It's those top 4 energy factors. That
Christy, I'm buying a new book today. There you go. Now you made me buy
I'm not buying anything this week. I said that. I'm like, I'm not buying anything. I'm trying to take a break. The other thing people ask about is their definition, if they're split or if it's single or triple. So you have split definition, I have single definition. So basically this is how our energy centers connect. So if they connect and all the energy flows in one line, so if you can get right from the head down to the bottom, whatever, that's a single definition person. That's the most common. Single definition people are very independent. They kind of like, I don't need all that. I can figure this out on my own. They can sometimes come off with an energy that people sometimes find a little bit like, intimidating to a certain degree. And then the split definition. So this is you. This is someone who's got some energy here and then some energy here, and they're not connected. And so you're always going to always be looking for someone who can help connect your energy. And so when I say that, if you meet someone that's got one of the gates that activates that channel and you get connected, it's like a compulsion. And so this always comes up in classes because someone will be like, is that why I dated that guy for all those years? I'm like, yeah, sorry. Like, it's energy. We can't help it, right? We're so compulsed to be with those folks that can help us do that. And so that's interesting. And then there's triple split, and these are people who are like, they have 3 sections that are defined and they don't connect. And so they're, again, very diverse, useful people, can do a lot, like kind of a jack of all trades sort of a person. So if you were an employer, and this is another setting I like to use this in, like if you know your employee is triple split, you're going to want to keep them kind of fluid and easy. They can work on this, they can work on that, like they'll fit in a lot of places. Yeah, and then there's quadruple split, which is much, much more uncommon because there's only 9 centers, and so for 4 of them, to all be disconnected, those people again, that are very diverse. They can work in a lot of spaces. Because if you think about it, if we have this kind of loose energy pattern, we mesh well with a lot of different kinds of people. So we're kind of
I know, but how can you work with yourself if you're all over the place? I'm just thinking.
That
you know
can be an issue too. There can be this kind of scattered feeling like, okay, my dad was this way, and both my parents were projectors, and they both worked like dogs. They both worked so hard, and I didn't know they were projectors because I learned about this after they were both gone. But I'm like, oh, like if we had only known,
yes,
but it can be very hard. And again, all of these sort of more sensitive energy types, I'm always like, you have to take care of yourself. You have to take care of your natural abilities. The thing with projectors, for example, and as I mentioned, the manifestors, they don't have that pink square defined, but they do have it open, so they're going to pull in the energy of everybody that's around them. So if you're a projector or a manifestor and you work in an office with, say, 6 people who are all manifestors or manifesting generators, and they have that lit up, you're going to pull in their energy all day. So you may be able to grind it out when you get home, but when you get home, you're like, oh, it can feel overwhelming. I lost my plug, right? Like I lost the ability to stay plugged in. The other thing too,
I understand my husband a little bit. I think I understand my husband a little bit better. He's a manifester, and because I'm older, he goes, I can feel your energy. He goes, I can feel it. Just,
and those folks sometimes have trouble sleeping if they sleep with someone who has that sacral energy, because they're going to churn that all night, whether they're awake or they're not. They're still pulling it, and a lot of people.
Should we do split beds now?
Some people do. Some people have 2 bedrooms. Like sometimes I can handle this. Sometimes I can't. The other thing too with projectors is they're going to have that energy there that they got to churn out by the end of the day. And same with if you have that pink square, it's essential to move. It's essential to have some sort of exercise in your day to get some of that energy out. Otherwise, you'll just kind of spend a lot. So it's really it's so fascinating.
So it works. You can do like couples as well. You can see the charts of the partners and see that's very helpful, right?
Yeah. I always do that in my relationship readings. So we'll do like a basic synastry chart, and then we'll pull the human design in, and we'll put the charts as they overlay. You can see the connections. You can see not only where we're attracted to each other and how they line up, but where there's overlap. So we both have this energy. We both might want to be in boss of that, right? Or if we both have a defined will center, which is an uncommon thing, but if both people have the defined will center, there can be headbutting unless you know it, and you can be like, you know what, I'm gonna let you win this one, I'm gonna win this one, and it'll be okay, and like taking turns with that. So it's just really fascinating to do those relationship readings, because you can look at all the ways that we sort of go together or don't, and all of that kind of a thing. And I find that there's always resonance, right? Just like you said, you tend to get a lot of folks on with Gemini. Same with the human design chart. We find these connections and such, and it's so fascinating. Even the reflector that I mentioned earlier, who has nothing on his own, if I put him and his fiance together, they have like 7 of the 9 centers are connected. She's a projector even, so like that she's not even bringing that much to the table in terms of energetic lineup, but together, the way that their channels connect, it's like all of a sudden there's this whole new thing when they're together. So I think it's really beautiful when you look at it in this way.
This is such a amazing, fascinating field of studies of just knowing this as a tool in your life. It can be so helpful. I'm amazed. I knew a little bit, but this is really something that I'm actually going to look more into it, because I think it's very important now, and especially with astrology, I can understand, the energies of planets, how they affect the right energies of, head, sun, whatever. So is there any connection with planets and the energy points?
Definitely. So I always tell people who have the astrology savvy, so people who know their chart already, look up your earth, look up your your sun and your moon, and see what gates they are in. And so what happens in the chart, the gates are committed to a sign. Okay, so if it's gate 20 is a Gemini, gate 20 is a Gemini gate. Any planet can move through that, much like it could in the sky, right?
Okay.
But that gate's always going to be Gemini. And so looking up what gate is active, you know, I always like to say, look at the energy center it lands in your chart. Is that defined or not? You know, like I have my actual sun sign is, I'm in Aries, I'm in gate 17, it's in the Ajna center, and for me that's not a defined center. So even looking at that, like you have your sun in an undefined place, so it's harder to bring that energy forward, right? And so I also, if you look at my Placidus chart, I have that.
Oh, okay.
You know, yeah.
So you can see through centers which planets are more activated in you, like which
yes.
oh, okay.
And
So what do you see in my chart? Just
are
quickly.
more prominent. Like, so for you, for example, because you have your moon conjunct Mercury, both of those are in gate 20. So I would want to look at gate 20 and look at, like, this is what I'm thinking and talking about. This is my emotional self. What does that look like in my chart? What is that gate? What it's for you, it's in the throat center. For everybody, it's in the throat center. There's a lot of Gemini in the throat center. We'll go through this in class. We'll pull up a lot of examples. So you can look where you have those conjunctions, where that gate shows up a lot in your chart to kind of understand that energy better. Or for you have also Mars and Saturn together in gate 29, looking at that gate and understanding that better through the lens of Mars and Saturn. And so that's where the astrology kind of weaves in, and it's like,
I love that.
Once you add that layer, it's like, forget it, I can't do anything else anymore. I'm just going to sit here all day and look at this.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So you can feel energy, so I can feel, probably. So where Saturn is, and there's some kind of restrictions. I would say that if there's something blocking there, right? I would say,
right.
Is it?
Yeah. And then you could look at that gate to really understand how those two energies work together and why is that gate. And you have Saturn in that gate in both sides, plus your personality Mars. So you have that in 3 spots, which is fairly significant. So that's always something I recommend to people. You know, for example, in your design chart, you have gate 36, you have Mercury and Venus together in your design chart. And so it's always fascinating as an astrology person to look at your design chart, because these are energies that are not familiar to you. I have no earth signs in my whole chart, but in my design chart, I do. So I can bring that earth energy in a subconscious way.
Yeah, I only have Virgo rising as well.
Yeah.
I only have Virgo rising. That's it, nothing else.
And right? You know what's really cool is that the ascendant is in a gate, like it lights up a gate, but it does not have activation. So it won't show up in your chart, but it is in a place. So I always like to look, like, where's my ascendant? What is this gate? What does this look like? So that shows up too. So you can look at that, but it doesn't activate any part of your chart in particular. And you have 2. You have a design one and a personality one. So
wow. Guys, I don't know about you, but this is, for me, it's mind-blowing. So much information. Christy. No, you give us so much to think about, to research more. The whole point of all this, my talks to other people, is to just bring curiosity into all of us, and to make us want to research and find out more, right? And if you want a human design reading, please talk to Christy. As you see, you know, just contact her. She's amazing. I want to thank you so much for your time today. All this knowledge, all this information. It's been really, really fun for me, but I'm a information junkie. So
you got all that Gemini, you can't help it.
Yeah. No, and I think it's important that we all learn, because we don't have opportunity to, you know, not everyone has access to books, or, you know, people just can't afford many things, and I feel that this is just a little bit of, you know, to find a way. What, you know, sometimes you have a spark. Oh, this is what really interests me. You know, not everybody. We don't have time to learn about everything, but you know, sometimes you mean, oh, I want to learn more about this. So this is the whole point of all these lives that I'm doing, to bring awareness of many interesting things in this world that can help us actually and empower us, and many things.
Yes, I'm so
and
glad to
it's
share
always
with you.
lovely to have such a nice guest as you, so eloquent and everything. Thank you so much, and I hope you're gonna have some coffee soon somewhere in Buffalo or somewhere in the region.
We'll have to get together. Thank you so
Absolutely.
much. Take care.
Thank you. Happy full moon, everybody.
Yes,
take care.
Full moon. Take care.
Yeah. Thank you so much. See you soon. Bye bye.